What's going on, guys? Typically I don't ever do, or I very rarely ever do repair videos while I'm at work, primarily because I'm here to work, but found quite the gremlin. Figured this might help some of you guys out if you ever run into this issue. Now, what we're dealing with here on this one, we've already got this one diagnosed, but we had no front headlight on this side, high beam or low beam, no turn signals anywhere on the car, no tail lights in the back, no brake lights, no third brake light, no parking lights. We did have reverse lights, but this headlight was working, the high beam and the low beam. But basically I'm going to go over what I found, and this could be a common issue. It might not be this particular Kia Optima. This is a 17, I believe. Yeah, this is the 17. This is the turbo model. Figured I'd help you guys out if you're running into a similar issue. I did not find any information about my specific issues that I was having with this Kia, but I'm going to show you what ended up happening. Now, I do have this somewhat torn apart already. This took me all of about 5 minutes to shred all this down, but this is actually not where any of the diagnostics took place. Printed out all the wiring diagrams, started chasing the circuit down. Long story short, what we ended up finding. So this is what's called a smart junction box, and in fact they were really nice and actually put the label on the control module for you. Look at that right there. But this one actually had an aftermarket alarm in it, or a tracker that was installed on it, whether it was a buy here pay here kind of place, or some dealerships are actually starting to do these. Most of the dealer ones are a lot better than this. You don't have to actually hack up the damn harness. But what we ended up finding is that I wasn't getting any of the voltages that I needed for the tail lights, the harnesses. Everything runs through the smart junction box. So what I ended up doing was connecting a scan tool to this one, to the OBD2 port, and then got into this smart junction box control module. And then I could actually see as I turned, headlights on, blinkers, left, right, turn signals, high beams, I could actually see the scan tool commanding, or the smart junction box actually commanding the circuit on. And then once I was digging, now you'll have to take that connector apart. They're really not too bad to do. All you got to do is pull this arm off. It slides to a very specific place, and then the arm actually pops off once the connector's obviously out. And then there's two tabs up here that you have to push in, and then this will pry out and pull straight up, and then you have direct access like this one to back probe and test all your pins and see what voltages this smart control module is actually sending out. Now, with as many circuits as we're down, meaning the tail lights are on a different circuit, the brake lights are on a different circuit, headlight was on a different circuit, going through the wiring diagram and looking it all over, my first assumption was that this smart junction box had failed. And indeed, I was not getting any voltage out of this. However, that was not the issue. What had actually happened is this is one of the main power wires out of the smart junction box under the hood, and I'll show you that in a second. But what ended up happening is this shorted to ground and popped the main fuse. Now, I'm not talking about one of these little 10, 20 amp fuses, because none of these fuses actually are in the circuits for the brake lights, tail lights, a headlight. None of these are actually fuses for that. I think there's one high beam 20 amp fuse under the hood, and that's it. Everything else is run through one massive 50 amp fuse under the hood, which we're about to show you. But this white wire had actually shorted to ground somewhere in the harness. It's shorted directly to ground. In fact, if I were to, what I tried to do was jump it to try to get voltage back on the circuit with that blown fuse, because I knew that fuse was garbage. It had blown now, and I didn't know if we still had a current short to ground, or if it was just because of the accident there was a voltage spike or whatever else happened. But this wire is what we're going to end up doing is overlaying this. And unfortunately, I don't have the time to actually show as I drill all the holes through the firewall, or poke a hole through a rubber grommet, or whichever route we decide to get through that firewall. But that is what happened. Is this pin right here, that white wire, goes right in there. He shorted to ground. So pulled the connector out, depinned it, removed this pin, and then just installed the jumper so I could perform a couple of tests to see. And before I did that, I just did a quick voltage reading, went from power, which is this blue wire. These are all main power wires coming into the smart junction box. But I just took a volt reading from here to here, and it should have been open because that fuse was blown. There should not have been any voltage in any way, shape, or form. Not even, what do you call that? Not even voltage drop, as it's called. So if there were any kind of a resistance on either end of this, you'll read voltage. But what I was reading was a solid battery voltage, like 12.5 volts, which means that this had shorted completely to ground. Now, once I installed just a quick jumper in there to supply power back, and the risk that I ran was blowing the main fuse for this one, but I'll show you up top here in just a second, that main fuse. Jump power to here, all my lights worked, no issues, no problems, headlights, tail lights, brake lights, turn signals, hazard warning lights, corner lights, everything lit up, everything started working again. So I knew that that was my issue, and we're going to show you under the hood where that goes. Unfortunately, we're not torn all the way down yet, but that goes into this smart junction box. This is your ECM. He's just got to get pulled out to do the repair. But under this cover, this main fuse right here is what had blown, and it was one of these, and it's very difficult to see on this camera. You might be able to see it, but one of them is blown. That one right there. Right there. He's blown. And so now what we have to do is, instead of replacing the harness, because this is actually a dealership that owns this car, he doesn't want to have to pay to replace the harness. So what we're going to do is called overlay the wire. So we're going to take a wire, obviously a lot longer than this one. I got one ordered coming from Parts House, but I've got to run a wire from where it was there all the way back up into this smart junction box. Now the wire that comes in is actually coming down here and coming up underneath the smart junction box down there. So I've got to pull out the ECM, have to pull out the air box, the battery, and the battery tray, which this one's still sitting in here. Just got them out of my way, and then actually pull the smart junction box, turn it over, find that big bulk white wire, and it's huge. It's either a 10 or an 8 gauge. But what you'll have to do is just cut it off up here at the junction box, and then run a new wire up through the firewall and back up into that smart junction box. Will fix your problem. Very easy to test. All you've got to do is test that wire and see if you have 12 volts on it or have a solid ground on that wire. Hopefully this video helps you out. I kind of kept it short. I really wish I could sit here and actually show you how to take every one of these apart. Really, you don't need anything more than a 10 millimeter, an extension, and some patience. Overall, not bad though. We ended up getting, I think, 3 hours to overlay the wire, and I was about 3 hours in diagnostics, so a total of about 6 hours to repair this one. Been a little bit slow this April, so I mean it's gonna pay pretty decent. Hope this helps you guys out. Have an excellent day.